Hello there.
So the Monsterverse seems to bounce from director to director, and with different directors and with different creative teams and things like that comes different Monsterverse lore. And a lot of the lore surrounding Godzilla has actually been changed since the beginning of the Monsterverse, just surrounding the entire character. So we're going to get into it in this video and answer the question of whether or not these various retcons are ruining the Monsterverse Godzilla. I really think it's a fair enough question considering the amount of retcons that have happened and kind of how substantial they are to Godzilla's character. So we're going to discuss it in this video, guys. If you enjoy my Monsterverse content, then consider subscribing. I have a lot of stuff like this just on my channel right now, and yeah, let's get into it.
The Atomic Fair.
Now, I'm going to do a separate video talking about all of the Monsterverse retcons that have happened, and there's actually more than I thought when I continue to look into it, and it's something that kind of comes with the territory of establishing a large franchise with a large film universe, you know, with a lot of different movies and a lot of different directors. You're going to have certain things that are retconned and changed as the films go on, but the Monsterverse has specifically a lot of them, and a lot of controversy recently surrounding Godzilla's character, coming down to whether or not Godzilla is even considered a species in the Monsterverse. So we're going to explain some of these retcons, and we're going to explain how they affect the Monsterverse overall. So when Godzilla arrived in 2014, we were actually introduced to another Godzilla skeleton that was found with Mudo eggs inside of it. Now we got a backstory for this Godzilla, and his name is actually Dagon. This is something that was explored in the Godzilla Aftershock comics, and you can actually see in this comic where this Godzilla is killed and the Mudo eggs are inserted into its dead body where they hatch later. So it's established pretty early on here that Godzilla is a species, but when we move into Godzilla King of the Monsters, the Monsterverse was headed in a much different direction than what we saw when Adam Wingard took over, both in Godzilla vs. Kong and Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, and I think it's a little bit jarring. I actually appreciate the direction more, and this may be controversial to say, that Michael Daughtry took with the Monsterverse, and touching a lot more on some of that Toho lore that was already established for this character. So in the 2019 Godzilla King of the Monsters movie, it's pretty much once again established that Godzilla is a species, but then we move into Godzilla vs. Kong, and this is where things start to get a little muddy, because in the art book of that Godzilla vs. Kong film, we actually see what looks to be Zos-Lahawa. Now, Zos-Lahawa was also introduced in the novelization of Godzilla vs. Kong, where Jaya kind of talks about Zos-Lahawa. Now, in the Godzilla vs. Kong novel, Jaya basically says that this is a Godzilla, or Godzilla, who ate a star and turned wicked, and that the Iwi and Kongs teamed up to fight this Godzilla, but were ultimately not successful and ended up traveling to the surface. Now, this is something that, like I said, is establishing Godzilla vs. Kong, and then when you couple that with the writings that were on the wall, I mean, for me, it's fairly obvious that Zos-Lahawa was intended to be some other Titan. Whether or not people want to say it's Godzilla now, I will pretty much debate anybody in the comments who wants to say that this actually is Godzilla, because if you look at the art of Godzilla King of the Monsters, it's fairly obvious that this is not intended to be Godzilla. You can see it in the images of the murals that are on the wall, where you have multiple Godzillas and Kongs teaming up against this Titan. Now, in this art book, it even says this. This is what Adam Wingard said. The saga has room for many more opponents who would menace the King of the Monsters now that Hollow Earth is open for business and humans have proven themselves capable of building Titan-level machines. On the other hand, the Monsterverse has demonstrated some of its best moments do not rely solely on spectacle. Now, in the book, it also has this to say from Legendary's Jay Ashenfelter. It says, "We've had discussions about going even bigger, but could there be a version where this story is less world-traversing and more intimate? On the other hand of the scale, we've had conversations about how in King of the Monsters we found out that King Ghidorah was from outer space. That's a ticking time bomb sitting in the franchise that's just begging for exploration." So, guys, I feel that clearly in Godzilla King of the Monsters, they're seeding the idea for Zoslahawa, for some kind of space Godzilla. They're also still established in this film that there are multiple Godzillas, and that during the Great Titan War, it was the Godzillas versus the Kongs. This is something that we came to understand leading up to Godzilla versus Kong. And then when we get to Godzilla x Kong, everything is ripped out from under you. Now, I am totally willing to accept that Scar King and Shimo came along, and that they were kind of missing from the war, and that they were pieces of this Titan War that were missing, and that Shimo actually froze Ghidorah. All of that makes perfect sense to me, but it's when they try to flip the script now and say that in this film it was solely Godzilla who fought the Titan War, and it was solely Godzilla who sealed away these great apes, as well as Scar King in the Hollow Earth. So when we also look at what Greg Keyes had to say,
does Godzilla remember his mom or dad?
Does Godzilla remember his mom or dad?
Yeah.
I have no idea. In fact, I don't even know if he had a mom or dad. That's not clear to me. Early on in writing some of these books, we would talk about Godzilla's species, and at a certain point, Toho asked us to stop doing that. I don't know why. I don't know what that indicates. I don't know what that means to them. But while it's clear that there have been other Titans very similar to, like the ones that Serizawa finds mummified or whatever underground.
Now, he didn't say that it's completely retconned, but he did say that Toho does not want them to talk about Godzilla being a species any longer, and I just find that to be so disheartening. But moving along, I think that's a foundation of the Monsterverse, kind of a pillar of the Monsterverse, and something that I actually said years ago to a buddy of mine. I remember saying this, that I thought this was something that was so cool about the Monsterverse, that they established that Godzilla is a species, and that there was an army of Kongs and an army of Godzillas that fought. But it seems that Toho wants to establish Godzilla as kind of one all-powerful Titan, one to rule them all kind of thing. But that kind of just takes away from Dagon, who has already been established in the lore. And I think with the removal of Dagon as a Godzilla, or them wanting to establish that he's a Titan that resembles Godzilla but isn't exactly Godzilla, I don't know how they're going to touch base on that. Knowing Legendary, they'll probably just never talk about Dagon again.
Come on now, dog. Come on, man.
But I think that the original lore that they established for Godzilla in this Monsterverse is the one that they should continue to push forward with. And I hate to say it because I do love Toho, and at the end of the day, they created Godzilla and they have the final say in what happens with the character. I think they're wrong here, guys. I think that Godzilla should remain a species. So comment down below and let me know what you think about this. But I think it's something that is more controversial than people are willing to let on and admit. Because if they're willing to shift around the lore this much, then I think that it can just kind of dismantle the Monsterverse altogether. And it will just really start to turn these movies into even more fun popcorn flicks. When you look at the Fox X-Men movies, and when you look at when they started to move away from the lore that they established in those movies, that is when the quality started to drop, and that is when people started to just kind of get confused with the timeline and no longer care. And I do not want to see that happen with the Monsterverse. So comment down below, guys. Let me know what you think about my thoughts on this. Do you think that this ruins the Monsterverse for you in any way? I'm not going to go as far as to say it ruins it for me, but I think some major changes or just some consistency needs to happen with the lore in the Monsterverse, because I think there's no point in reading all of these prequel comics and really just trying to get into this lore if it's just going to change from director to director. But in my next video, I will be sure to talk about all of the retcons that have happened in the Monsterverse, because there's been a lot more than I think people think. So let me know what you guys think. I love Godzilla. I love the Monsterverse. I love the opportunity to see these characters established in a proper film franchise with like amazing CGI and modern day effect. But I would love for them to get back on track with the idea of Godzilla being a species and potentially introducing Zoslahawa as a space Godzilla who actually returns. The Godzilla who ate a star is kind of the next villain in the next film. I think that would be ideal, but there's so many rumors going around right now about who the next villains could be, and it seems like they may be going with some kind of new mech or some kind of new hybrid Titan. So comment down below, let me know what you guys thinking for this video. That's all I got. So until the next one, be safe and stay well. Bye-bye.